What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel for another Ask Me Anything episode. This should be one of the final episodes before the season starts. I'm sure maybe we'll do one or two more, but it's getting to be that time. I'm really excited. During the season is really when this series is at its best, in my opinion, because there's always something new going on. But we still have a lot of great questions for this episode, so big thank you to every single one of you who took the time to leave a comment on the post. I appreciate all of you. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the first question. This one comes from Herman the German Merman, who says, who will get more wins this season, Nedeljkovic or Husso? People seem to think Husso is the default answer, but Ned has already had his adjustment period in Detroit. I'm curious to hear what you think, and also I appreciate the support. It's really hard to say. Obviously, goaltending is incredibly tough to predict, and I agree with you on the fact that people by default are kind of already positioning Ville Husso as the Red Wings starter just because I feel like he's making more money and he's coming off of a season in which he was fantastic, but I don't necessarily think that's the case. I mean, Ville Husso is kind of in the exact same situation heading into this season that Nedeljkovic was in heading into last season with Detroit. Ville Husso was lights out for the Blues this past season, and in Nedeljkovic's case, the season before he came to Detroit, the 56-game shortened season with the Canes, statistically, he was one of the best goaltenders in the league. So just because Husso's stats this past season were fantastic, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's automatically going to carry over to his play in Detroit. There definitely should be a little bit of an adjustment period there for Ville Husso, but then you also have to factor in Husso's first year in Detroit shouldn't be as tough as Nedeljkovic's first year in Detroit, in the sense that Detroit's going to be a much better team this year than they were last year. Like, the decor in front of Husso should be much better than the one that was in front of Nedeljkovic last season. All in all, in the end, I'll say this again, it is really hard to predict something like this. I feel like they're both going to start around the same amount of games, but if I had to make a prediction on which one I think will finish with more wins, I guess I will go with Nedeljkovic just because he already has that 1 year in Detroit under his belt. This next question is an interesting one, was one of the most liked comments on the post. You haven't really told about yourself much, and since this is Ask Me Anything, how are you doing in general? Are you studying? Do you go to work, or are you doing this full time? And also, really appreciate the support. I'm doing pretty well though, a little bit bored this time of year, but I'm really looking forward to October. It's probably my favorite month of the entire year. Obviously, the big thing is the NHL regular season starts. I'm a big Halloween guy too, love scary movies, love haunted houses, haunted corn mazes, all that kind of stuff. And not like the cheesy ones either. I like the real good ones where they literally run at you with actual chainsaws that just don't have the chain on them. There's nothing quite like an adrenaline rush like that. And no, I'm not studying anything right now. This is actually what I do full time. You know, I'm really hoping to make it in the sports media world one day, so I'm just going to continue to grind away at this, build my brand, build my platform, and hopefully doing this can, you know, lead to some other cool opportunities one day. Moving on now to the next question. This one comes from Xavier Morgan Gillard, who says, excluding Kane and Taves, who do you think are the players most likely to get dealt by the trade deadline? So excluding Kane and Taves, I do still have two other Hawks to mention, Max Domi and Andreas Athanasiou, both signed 1 year, $3 million deals with the Hawks. I really feel like both of those deals were signed with Chicago having the intention of playing them in top 6 roles, giving them power play time, and hopefully having them put up big numbers to flip them at the trade deadline for futures. So I definitely expect both of those guys to get dealt. Another name I'll continue to throw around as a Red Wings fan, Tyler Bertuzzi, still doesn't have an extension, set to become a UFA at the end of this upcoming season. He's had a couple of shaky negotiations with the Red Wings already. He's been through arbitration twice now, I believe, and obviously this time with him being a UFA, arbitration will not be an option, and Tyler Bertuzzi could just walk for nothing if he wanted to. So I really feel like if Steve Yzerman doesn't get the sense that he can get Bertuzzi extended before free agency opens, that he won't even let him get past the deadline as a Red Wing. And one other name I'll throw out there, John Klingberg signed a 1 year deal with the Ducks in the offseason. If they're not anywhere close to the playoff hunt around the deadline, I definitely think that's a name we're going to hear brought up a lot, and he could potentially be moved. The next question we have comes from Blues fan 2518, who says, what are your thoughts on the Blues giving Kyrou and Thomas identical 8-year contracts? And also, I appreciate the support. I really like it for the Blues. Obviously, Kyrou and Thomas were two of the biggest breakout stars in the league this past season. They're the present and the future of the St. Louis organization, so I think it makes sense to get them locked up long term. And I definitely think the AAV is fair, considering both of these guys are still pretty young. They're going to be good for a long time. I really can't see at any point throughout these contracts either of these guys being looked at as overpaid. Moving on now, the next question comes from Scrappy18, who says, do you think Cole Perfetti will be a mainstay on the Jets' top 6 this season, and what kind of production would you expect if he gets a chance to play alongside guys like Connor and Ehlers? A spot in the Jets' top 6 is really Cole Perfetti's to lose. I expect him to be there. I think his game would complement the likes of a Nikolai Ehlers and a Kyle Connor or Dubois, whoever he ends up playing with, really well. High skill guy, one of the league's top prospects heading into this upcoming season. I mean, aside from Perfetti, I mean, who else would fit that role and play in the Jets' top 6? Like, I can't see Jansen Harkins doing it, you know, maybe Mason Appleton, but I Ideally, you probably want him in the bottom 6. I don't really envision a guy like Christian Vesalainen in that role. Svechnikov did it a little bit last season, but he's gone now, so again, I definitely think it's Perfetti's spot to lose right now. The next question we have comes from Zyphorus, who says, with Jason Robertson still holding out on his contract, and the Stars owner effectively saying he's hesitant to give him $7 million a year coming off of his ELC, could you see this holdout lasting deep into the season? I wasn't scared of this initially, but I'm growing increasingly concerned, and also appreciate the support. Yeah, if I was a Stars fan, I would probably be a little bit concerned at this point, especially with what the owner had to say, and even if they were willing to give Jason Robertson the kind of money that he deserves and is going to command, the Stars don't really have the cap space for that. Looking at Cap Friendly, they have a little over $6.3 million in projected cap space, and I don't care if it's a long-term deal, like a 2 to 3 year bridge deal, or even a 1-year deal, whatever kind of deal Jason Robertson signs, I guarantee you it's going to come in at a higher AAV than $6.3 million, so I definitely feel like this has the potential to bleed into the season, which is really unfortunate. Jason Robertson, in my opinion, is one of the more fun players to watch in the league. The dude is a beast, and of course, with him being one of, if not the best forward on the Dallas Stars, the team is much better off with him on the ice helping them win than sitting at home or just not being with the team. The next question we have comes from Max Kane Kirill, who says, do you think the Panthers could miss the playoffs this year? If I had to pick a sleeper team to miss, it would definitely be them. That defense is really meh, and thank you for the support. I definitely agree with you on their defense being meh. I think they're really going to miss Mackenzie Weegar, and their number 1 stud defenseman, Aaron Ekblad, obviously doesn't have the greatest track record the past couple seasons of staying healthy, so if he goes down again, especially if it's a longer term injury, then things on the back end for them would really be looking grim, and of course Sergei Bobrovsky can be pretty hit or miss, so although I still would be really surprised if they miss the playoffs, just because I mean going from winning the President's Trophy one year to missing the playoffs the next would be a pretty crazy turnaround. I don't think it's impossible. Next up, this one comes from Deltago, who says, out of all the players who have signed PTOs, which for those of you who don't know is a professional tryout, basically an invite to training camp, which ones do you think are most likely to make their respective teams? The one off the top of my head that I think is almost a lock to make their team is Zach Aston Reese making the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm honestly surprised he's even on a PTO. This is an NHL caliber player without a doubt. One of the best bottom 6 shutdown wingers in the league. When it comes to defense and forechecking, the dude's a beast. I really feel like the Leafs and Zach Aston Reese have a handshake deal in place, like they have the details of a contract agreed upon, they just don't have it signed because the Leafs don't really have cap space right now and they gotta make some moves first. And another name I'll mention, Calvin DeHaan, defenseman, signed a PTO with the Hurricanes. He's actually played for Carolina in his career already, so there is some familiarity there. Has a pretty decent track record of being a serviceable bottom pairing defenseman, so I think odds are Carolina picks him up probably on like a 1-year league minimum deal as like a 7th defenseman, some injury insurance. Moving on now, this question comes from Astro Wraith, who says, two-parter. First, which player on a new team next season do you think will benefit the most from the change of scenery / system, and which do you think will regress the most? Good question, and thank you for the support. I'll give my answer for the second part first. I feel like this is a really easy one. Nazem Kadri, I definitely think we're going to see a little bit of regression there. I mean, even if he stayed in Colorado, I think we would have seen his numbers come down, but now that he's on the Flames, I especially feel like his numbers are going to drop quite a bit. It's not that he's not going to be impactful. I definitely think he will still be a very impactful player for the Flames. It's just their offense probably isn't going to be as high-flying and as high-powered as Colorado's was, and even though Calgary has the potential to have a really good power play unit, probably won't be quite as good as having, Cale Makar out there on the power play with Rantanen and McKinnon, which Kadri had last season. And to answer the first part, who will benefit the most from a change of scenery, I'm actually going to go with Brent Burns on this one. I've said multiple times, I feel like them picking him up in that trade is one of the more underrated additions of the offseason. For the past, it feels like forever, Brent Burns has always been like the league leader in minutes with the San Jose Sharks. He's just had such a big weight on his shoulders carrying that blue line, and now he's really not going to have to do that in Carolina. He's got the likes of Jacob Slavin there, Brett Pesce, Brady Shea, so many good defensemen on the Hurricanes. That decor is stacked, so Brent Burns isn't going to have so much pressure on him, isn't going to have to log so many minutes, and given Brent Burns' age, I feel like that's only going to have a positive impact on his game. Next up from Rob, do you think that Gallagher has been overlooked for the captaincy of the Habs? With all respect for Suzuki, I think Gallagher is more fitting for the role. I see where you're coming from. If you were to ask me, 2 years ago, who do I think is going to be the next captain of the Habs, I probably would have said Brendan Gallagher, but now with them kind of being in that rebuilding stage, with them being a younger team, I honestly feel like Nick Suzuki is the perfect player to kind of lead them into that next era. He's really young, but he carries himself so well, really professional, really well spoken, and when he was announced as Canadiens captain, his teammates had nothing but good things to say about him, including Brendan Gallagher, who said Suzuki was actually the heartbeat of the team. So given where the Habs are as an organization right now, I definitely think they made the right choice, but that's not to say Brendan Gallagher wouldn't have made a great captain, because I think he would have for sure. Moving on now from 37 Will Dog, thoughts on the Sharks' new jerseys and the decision to switch to teal coloring for the home pants and helmet. So for those of you who haven't seen the Sharks' new jerseys, new uniforms, the whole getup, I'll put a picture on the screen here. I actually really like the jerseys a lot, love what they did, but I will say the home uniform, I think it's a little bit too much teal, like the helmet, the socks, the jersey, the pants. I think it's too much. I saw one person say it looks like they are a creative team from an NHL game, and I'm definitely getting that vibe too. So those are my quick thoughts on it. Again, love the jerseys, but I'm not a fan of the whole home uniform. I feel like black pants and black helmet and gloves would have been a little bit nicer. And now for the final question of today's episode, this one comes from Adam Warren, who says, what do you think happens if Carter Hart has another miserable season and Philly stinks again? At what point is Carter Hart not the future in the pipes? I mean, it would definitely be a little bit concerning if he has another miserable season like the one he had in 2020-21, but you do have to be patient with goaltenders, especially young goaltenders. You got to remember that Carter Hart became a full-time NHLer when he was 19. He's heading into his 5th NHL season, and he's only 24 years old. Some goaltenders don't even make their NHL debut until they're like 25 and 26 and then go on to have good careers, right? I'm still really confident in the fact that Carter Hart is going to be the Flyers goaltender of the present and the future. I mean, his first couple seasons in the NHL showed so much promise. He was unbelievable in the 2020 playoffs. You're going to see ups and downs from a young goaltender. I think he's going to get through it, and I definitely expect him to be the Philadelphia Flyers starting goaltender for a very long time. So that is going to wrap up today's episode of the Ask Me Anything series. Really hope you guys enjoyed, and like I said at the beginning, huge shout out to every single one of you who took the time to come up with a question and leave it on the post. Even if I didn't feature it in the video, I appreciate all of you guys. If this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content throughout the season just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.